this spell, besides the orange candle, the pin, there's a white candle to symbolize the element of fire. Small bowl of water for the element earth, water. A small bowl of salt representing earth, and a feather representing the element of air, because those are key elements in not just Wiccan, but any indigenous prayers are prayers to the elements, if you will. And then I won't read the complete spell, but pretty much what I mentioned earlier is just to bind Donald J. Trump so that he may fail utterly, that he may do no harm to any human soul, and so on. And then he says when the ceremony is over, it's crucial to ground yourself by laughing loud and hearty, since Trump really hates people laughing at him. So there's quite a bit of satire in this, but they are sincere in what they're doing. I mean, it's their way of coping with this. So interestingly enough, Christian groups who are taking this very seriously are calling for a day of prayer to counteract the spell. But prayer is simply the Christian version of magic spells, in a way, isn't it? I mean, what Wiccans do in their ceremonies are forms of prayer. So basically, now what it is they're praying for, I guess they're praying to protect Donald Trump. But it's interesting to see that they're actually, in a way, both of the groups are in a way on the right track as to how we deal with these situations. We deal with them from within. We deal with them by doing our meditations and our prayers and going within and visualizing no harm to anyone, visualizing positive outcomes. Now there is a certain level of negativity in the Wiccan approach, since they are attempting to stop Donald Trump. But I think ultimately it works as a positive prayer, because by stopping him from hurting others, by doing these, by enacting these approaches that are harmful to other people and the planet, he's really harming himself as well. And if this binding spell prevents him from harming himself as well as other people, then that's a really positive thing. Fascinating stuff going on. But if you're not into it, you don't have to do a spell. You don't have to create a witchcraft circle or anything like that. You don't even have to pray. You can just visualize. And as they say, send out good energy. It may sound pretty airy-fairy, but that's actually one of the most powerful things we are capable of doing as beings on this planet. Okay, so that brings me to a further discussion of New Thought, which I mentioned, I guess, not last week, the week before, in talking about the rise of prosperity preachers, I was talking about that in relation to Donald Trump being an adherer to this prosperity uh, preaching approach, and that it has some of its roots in the New Thought movement. So I've had a lot of response to that and questions about, you know, what exactly is the New Thought movement. Um, I mentioned that it was not like Christian evangelical approaches at all, although there are some similarities, and particularly in these prosperity preachers, they some of the ideas of connecting to the idea of the divine wanting everyone to be prosperous. Um, they took some of that and went in a different direction. No, so I thought it would be important, since there's a lot of curiosity about it now, to talk about the New Thought movement and the things that developed from it, and where it stands today and how it influences us today, because it is quite influential. You know, everything that you've seen, like if you saw like the movie The Secret, which talks about how we manifest the things we want in our world. When you see, what's another movie that came out? Well, we're talking about 10 years ago now, but a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know, that talks about the metaphysics of life, and how our thoughts create the reality around us. All of these are, you know, current ideations of what the New Thought movement was about. So I'm going to give you a little history lesson. We're going to talk about the different aspects of the New Thought movement. It's probably going to take a couple of segments of the show, so we'll probably be talking about this into March. But I wanted to, talk about it because there certainly is a lot of curiosity, and people may have heard the term but aren't sure about it, and some people are involved in churches that are New Thought churches but never really understood what that meant. So here we go. So it's considered a philosophical movement, but it's also got an awful lot of spirituality involved in it. But people call it a philosophical movement to differentiate it from religion, because when you talk about spirituality, people conflate that with religious belief. It's not the same, and don't get me started because I talk about it all the time on the show. I'll talk about it again, but I want to focus on this for now. So the New Thought movement began somewhere in the 19th century, and the person that is sort of considered to be the beginner of this kind of New Thought movement is a gentleman by the name of Phineas Quimby. Phineas Quimby was a writer and I guess a philosopher, a spiritual teacher, and he also believed in mesmerism, which was quite popular in the time that he lived. Now he lived from let's see if I can find the dates here. Okay, he lived from 1802 and passed away in 1866. So during that time in America, there was an awful lot of interest in things like mesmerism. That's an early form of hypnotism, magnetizing, using. That's sort of an early form of, if you've heard of, crystals, using crystals to change people's energy. That's what magnetism basically is, and certainly crystal techniques come from that. So he lived in Maine, and he his writings are considered to be sort of the beginning of the New Thought movement. So, as a youth, he was the son of a blacksmith and he suffered from tuberculosis. And there was apparently his doctor prescribed him a medication called calomel, which, rather than curing his sickness, started to rot his teeth. And so, realizing he wasn't getting any better from the doctor's approach, he began experimenting with his own ideas. And so what he found was that intense excitement, like riding his horse at a fast speed, alleviated his pain for brief periods of time. And so he started to become interested in how the mind can affect the body. Now, it's unclear how he found the ultimate cure, but it apparently was through his own devices and not from the doctor's medicine. So, when a French mesmerist came to town by the name of Charles Poyen, he was quite fascinated by that, and he went to a lecture and learned quite a bit about the nature of animal magnetism and its powers. And according to Poyen, with proper training, anyone could become adept at administering hypnotism. So, Quimby, who had a job as a watchmaker, quit that job and began to follow this man Poyen on his tour of New England for about 2 years there, and he began to learn the techniques of mesmeric hypnotism. And then he began to do tours of his own and demonstrating in front of large crowds. And he began healing people of ailments that doctors could not cure. And he explained to his patients that disease was caused by false beliefs and that the cure was in the explanation of this. And that is that's a beginning tenet of New Thought. The idea that your thoughts can create what you experience, whether it is illness or health. That is an important element of New Thought approaches. So that was Quimby, and Quimby's work influenced quite a few other people, including a woman by the name of Mary Baker Eddy. And what Mary Baker Eddy did was to take these ideas that she learned from Quimby, and she was also one of his patients, by the way. But she shared his view that disease is rooted in, false beliefs, mental beliefs. And she found him inspiring, but she added an element of theism to it, and she created what we now know as Christian Science. So let's talk about Christian Science for a bit. Now, it's really important because people confuse it with Scientology all the time. It is not Scientology. It's not anything like Scientology. Scientology is, we'll get more into that later. But Scientology is a cult that has beliefs that involve alien worlds, and it being created by a science fiction writer. That's understandable. But Scientology is a whole other animal, and I don't want to get into it right now, but we'll talk about why that's different from these New Thought belief systems. So what Christian Science is a set of beliefs and practices that are metaphysical in nature. And Mary Baker Eddy developed this, saying that sickness is an illusion, and prayer can correct it. Now, she took it to the point where